If I asked you what your least favorite Call of Duty is, I bet you'll think of one of the more recent installments. However, we've also had some mid-entries in the early days of COD, and there's one in particular that gets caught in the crossfire of hate, despite having more to offer than you think. I'm Ornery, and this is the most misunderstood Call of Duty, aka Call of Duty Ghosts. I'm not asking you to like this game or even change your opinion about it. I just want to take a retrospective into one of the more off-color Call of Duties that actually got a lot of things right. From experimental ideas, abundant playlists, and major tweaks to the COD formula, we've got a lot to go over here. But let's start with some COD Ghosts was released on November 5th, 2013, just after the insane success of Black Ops 2 and right before the polarizing release of Advanced Warfare, developed by Infinity Ward, who are not only responsible for birthing Call of Duty in the first place, but the masterpieces of COD 4, MW2, and my personal favorite, MW3. The development of COD Ghosts also was not a cakewalk. With major changes to the dev team and also having developed the game cross-gen, this certainly was not helping their case. Anyways, with Black Ops 2 being a massive hit, people were pretty excited about an Infinity Ward title to follow up, and everyone had open minds with no hesitation from the community. That all changed once we got to launch, where those open minds turned into pitchforks. And that brings up the biggest change to this Call of Duty and probably what most people don't like about it. Multiplayer is pretty much what every player is here for, so I think it's pretty important that it's good. Well, as far as how Ghost multiplayer goes, it's all over the place and for the most people, not in a good way. The gunplay is very similar to any other Infinity Ward title, very arcadey and not very realistic, staying true to the classic formula. And although gunplay is pretty important to Call of Duty, the other factor that can dictate a game's success is the movement. I've heard a lot of people complain about Ghost being a very slow game, and I just have to ask, like, where? When I think of slow, I immediately jump to movement, but I guess that's not really what people are talking about. We'll get to that in just one second. But as far as movement goes, this is the very first COD to have a slide in it, which has now become a core mechanic to the modern installments. On top of this is where we also got the leaning mechanic, which really isn't all that game changing, but worth a mention since one could argue this was where mounting in modern COD could have been born. Anyways, back to the game being slow. I think you can chalk that up to the game's pacing being slow. But what makes COD Ghost a slow-paced game? Well, we can start with the TTK being extremely fast, probably one of the fastest in the entire franchise, which maybe could have been tweaked but never was. However, I just want to say that no matter where you put the TTK at, you are absolutely going to disappoint so many people. Like, you can never get it perfect. There's just no such thing. But since there was a quote-unquote problem with Ghost TTK, Infinity Ward rolled out a mosh pit playlist called Heavy Duty, which increased the base health of all players up to 130 instead of 100. And guess what? Everybody hated it, so nobody played it, and they eventually removed it from the game. So which one is it? Is the TTK too slow or too fast? Make up your mind. However, another big pace breaker is the maps. And we can go ahead and get this out of the way. Call of Duty Ghosts probably has some of the worst map selection in the entire Call of Duty franchise. COD is typically not very tactical and much more fast-paced with a short amount of time between engagements. But when you have maps like Stonehaven for a 6v6 map, that time between engagements is tripled. On top of that, we saw a long-range meta with marksman, sniper, and assault rifles being the main classes that were the best. SMGs were not near as good as they once were in the previous COD, so once again, long range on big maps are certainly not helping increase the pace of the game. Not to say that all the maps are bad, Strike Zone is actually one of my favorites, and there are a few DLC maps that we'll talk about later as well, but overall, the average rating for every map in this game has to be way lower than any other COD. I do want to talk about one last awful thing about Ghost's core gameplay that single-handedly made the game unplayable and that also ruined the pacing a little bit, and that's the dreaded IEDs. For those that don't remember, the IEDs were an equipment that was like a Claymore, Bouncing Betty, IMS, and C4 mixed all into one. It triggered when someone would walk near it, and it was pretty much a guaranteed kill, but the distance to trigger it was genuinely so large and inconsistent that you would often die without even being able to see these things. Not only for them being far away, but because they were also genuinely very difficult to make out. So what? We had a broken equipment at launch. No big deal, right? Well, it wouldn't be a big deal if it didn't take 3 months for them to fix this. And even after fixing this, they were still broken and needed one more round of patches. For a lot of people, this was just another thing keeping them from coming back to the game, and the time it took to fix this, for some people, it was already too late. The damage had already been done. We saw a lot of new elements to COD Ghosts, and some of these changes felt a little too ambitious for its own good, or changed the game too much to not even feel like COD anymore. We can go ahead and start with the biggest and probably most hated change to the core gameplay of Call of Duty Ghosts, and that is the removal of UAVs and adding SATCOMs instead. SATCOMs were a 3-point streak on assault and 4 for support, more on that later. They were pretty much a personal UAV, but instead of orbiting the map in the air, they would be stationary to the ground, very large and easy to destroy. They function quite differently as well in the way that they got got better the more you had active on your team. 1 would only ping enemies if you'd already seen them in your line of sight. 2 would act as a normal UAV. 3 would be a buffed UAV with faster sweeps. And 4 would be the equivalent of an advanced UAV, showing the direction that the enemy is facing and everything. I like the idea of the SATCOM, and the fact that you can make it stronger the more you have is kind of like pretty cool. I think they just needed to not make them stationary and on the ground like physically, kind of like a normal UAV would be in the air. And then also, why does this have to remove normal UAVs? Like, UAVs could just be a higher kill streak but still exist in the game. These kill streaks can definitely coexist and don't need to nullify each other, if that makes any sense. I also want to shout out there was a perk called Wiretap that let you tether enemy SATCOMs. It let you steal their effects, so if you had 1 SATCOM but the enemy had 2, you and everyone else with Wiretap would get the benefit of 3. Another big change, or more so a new feature to COD Ghosts, was the field order. The field order was a unique system in that at the beginning of each match, the first player killed would drop a briefcase. Whoever picks that up would then be prompted with some type of challenge to complete. Things like get a kill in midair, get a kill from behind, get 2 kills with headshots, or everyone's favorite, humiliate the next person you kill. After completing the challenge, you would be given a care package, which doesn't sound like anything crazy because care packages aren't anything new, but in COD Ghosts, you had a chance of getting a map exclusive kill streak. And let me tell you, these things got pretty unhinged. There were some simple ones like mortar fire, engulfing the map in gas, or a Harrier-like kill streak that you couldn't normally get. But then you had some crazy ones, especially once the DLC came around, like being able to play as Michael Myers himself on the map Fog, or on Unearth, which is an awesome remake of MW3's Dome. You could call in Seekers, which were the aliens from Extinction. More on Extinction later. And on the map Ruins, you could even play as Predator and just dominate the entire lobby. Even on the launch map Strike Zone, you could get a chem strike out of a field order, which was this game's nuke. And on that map in particular, after calling it in, whether it be from the kill streak or the care package, it would completely change the map and reorganize the layout entirely. What I'm trying to get here is that Call of Duty Ghosts took these like in-game dynamic changes to the max, which you really didn't have at that point. I'll even argue we still don't even have in Call of Duty to this day. There's even more of that dynamic gameplay with small things like opening and shutting doors. But then you got things on Unearthed once again. If you shot down the crane car, you could get an exclusive Venom X gun from Extinction and use it in multiplayer. This kind of stuff reminds you of something you'd see in Halo, which once again doesn't really fit the COD format, but something I really enjoyed. You could even get in that crane cab and fly around the entire map afterwards as well. You just don't see this kind of stuff in COD anymore. While we're talking about the DLC, aside from maps, we also got new guns alongside these map packs. And while the Maverick may have been one of the most loved guns, I really want to focus on the Ripper SMG. This was the first gun in Call of Duty to actually act as a hybrid gun, and unlike the Peacekeeper, which was the best of both worlds, this gun had an actual toggle between SMG or AR mode. This quickly became one of the best guns in the game and was kind of giving like aftermarket park vibes. Bring back DLC format, screw the live service. The creative class and customization in COD Ghosts may be one of the best in all of Call of Duty. I know that's a very bold statement, but it did a lot of things right. For starters, we have the Pick 10 system back from Black Ops 2, but now with some refinement, let you choose how you want to build your class with even more precision. We have nearly 40 perks to choose from, and they each have a point value attached to them for your Pick 10. Deadeye was a perk that increased your damage the higher you have a kill streak you were on, but was worth 5 points. Meaning, yes, it was very powerful and arguably broken, but it came to the caveat of taking half of your creative class options away, meaning you'd be lacking somewhere else. Maybe you'd have a primary and no secondary or grenades at all. Regardless, the Pick 10 is hands down the best creative class format we have ever had in Call of Duty, and Ghosts somehow improved on Black Ops 2's version of it. Moving into kill streaks, we had some fun ones like the Loki, Guard Dog, and Support Squad Mate, but like I said earlier, this is the only other game besides MW3 that has the Strike Package system. The Strike Package system allowed for 3 different types of kill streak rewards. One being the Assault, which was the traditional kill streaks. Support allowed your kill streaks to carry over after death, but were mostly non-lethal, and then Specialist replaced all your kill streaks with perks until you had every perk in the game with Specialist bonus. This gave the player even more customization to the already near perfect creative class and allowed a lot of different playstyles. COD Ghosts also introduced the Creative Soldier, which sort of replaced Prestige in a way since you had 10 soldiers you could have, and then level each of them up respectively. Basically choosing a base loadout as a head start with certain things already unlocked for you that you could then build off of and progress to maximize that soldier to your respective playstyle. I'm honestly kind of neutral on this change, like I don't think it's necessarily bad or good. Doesn't really add or take away from any other feature, but without a doubt certainly beats the Prestige system we have today. Speaking of progression, this game used squad points, which gave you 2 different avenues for unlocking things. One was your traditional level up, get to X level to unlock X item, and the other was unlocking it early by cashing in some squad points. Squad points were given to you by simply playing the game or by completing specific challenges. Going back to the Creative Soldier, we have one last aspect to it, and that was the player customization. You could change your outfit, your helmet, your gender, your boots, you name it, you had it all here. Before this, we kind of had something similar in Black Ops 1, but not near to this extent, and this would later become the norm in Call of Duty for the future. Some might argue it got out of hand. I wasn't wasn't sure where to fit this next part in, but I want to go ahead and talk about the playlists in COD Ghosts and how they're not only varied, but also brought some great new game modes into the mix. I really just want to focus on two here, and the first one is Cranked. Cranked is pretty much team deathmatch, only now you have a 30-second timer that activates between kills. If that timer finishes, you die. If you want to talk about a mode that helps the slow pacing of COD Ghosts, this is the one. On the other hand, we have Blitz, which is another great game mode that would blossom into Uplink in the future CODs. Blitz was essentially trying to infiltrate the enemy team's base and hop in their portal, giving your team a point and spit you back at your team's objective. This was also one of the game modes for the CWL that year and actually worked very well for competitive. Yet another way that COD Ghosts was innovative. Also a mode I would love to see be brought back. It's never been brought back in like the last 6 CODs, it feels like. COD always seems to launch with some type of third mode alongside campaign and multiplayer. Zombies is the one that comes to mind, but we also have other modes like Survival in MW3 or Spec Ops in MW2. We also have DMZ in Modern Warfare 2, Warzone and MW19, whatever, the list goes on. But in COD Ghosts, we got Extinction. Extinction was a survival mode that focused on an alien invasion co-op style gameplay. These were like long campaign missions that I actually thought were not only fun, but somewhat challenging as well. There was a money system that let you upgrade your equipment, armor, and other abilities. You also had like loadout you could customize. But let me tell you, the detail in this game mode was way more than I thought you could ever have in a non-zombies third mode. The content you got in these maps were pretty fleshed out. I say maps because we actually had 5 total maps since we got a new episode out with each DLC. But back to the details. We had full-blown cutscenes, several different types of enemies, interesting layouts for maps, unique weapons exclusive to the mode, and crazy boss fights as well. Basically felt like one big zombies Easter egg in the form of like a campaign mission with your friends. I'm not gonna sit here and say Extinction is like perfect or like the best mode ever, but if we're talking about a third mode that isn't zombies or Warzone, Extinction might be the next best thing, which is pretty impressive for Infinity Ward considering they did Modern Warfare Zombies. I want to mention one more thing about COD Ghosts, and that's that the campaign was actually pretty good. Now, if anyone says this campaign was bad, I would love to know why. The one and only critique I can think of that can actually be undone is the ending being a cliffhanger. Now, for some reason, COD Ghosts 2 has been rumored to be one of the next 3 Call of Duties, and if that's the case, the cliffhanger ending can be continued and give us a full-fledged story, which would be awesome considering how uncertain the future looked at the very end of COD Ghosts campaign. As far as the campaign itself, it tells an interesting story of how the Federation are terrorizing the United States, which is always a good story to be had. But aside from that, there's a revenge arc going on here involving fatherhood, brotherhood, and man's best friend. I'm not afraid to say it that COD Ghosts might be one of the most underrated COD campaigns of all time. There are a lot of phrases you could use to sum up Call of Duty Ghosts. Wrong place, wrong time, good game, but just not a good Call of Duty game, or maybe it's just trying too hard. But I want you to remember that the COD timeline went COD 4, World at War, MW2, Black Ops 1, MW3, Black Ops 2, which most would argue is the golden era of Call of Duty, only then to be followed up by COD Ghosts, which was then followed up by Advanced Warfare, Black Ops 3, Infinite Warfare, and World War 2, which are all very wishy-washy games. Except for you, Black Ops 3. Zombies was absolutely goated here. What I'm trying to say here is that COD Ghosts is right in the middle between 2 completely different eras of Call of Duty. With that being said, I think it's hitting the crossfire way too hard and receives a lot of unnecessary criticism. You got Black Ops 2 right before it and then Advanced Warfare right after. I mean, that is just like an exponential decline in my opinion. And since COD Ghosts tweaked the formula a little bit and made little changes here and there, I think people just write it off as a bad game. If that timing wasn't bad enough, also having developed this game cross-gen didn't help its cause whatsoever as well. This resulted in the game having an identity crisis that I think gave it some charm and helped it stand out from the franchise. But what are your thoughts on Call of Duty Ghosts? Like I said, I'm not asking you to change your opinion on the game, maybe just give it a little bit more respect or appreciation, which I know sounds so stupid. I know I enjoyed it at the time, and looking back at it, I think I even enjoy it more in retrospect. But go ahead and join my Discord if you're feeling crazy, and if you liked, leave a like. If you didn't, leave a dislike, and thank you so much for watching.